Moving on, looking inside of the bone. So we talked about the outside, the structures, the things on the outside. Inside of a bone cell, osteocyte means bone cell. We had that in a prior chapter. They are located in lacunae. Those are like the little circle opening spots that hold those cells. And then they lie in circles around your central or Haversian canal. There's a diagram that we'll get to where you can see these. I expect you to know this as well. Osteocytes or bone cells are going to pass nutrients and gases. Obviously, the bone itself is not real conducive to letting things flow. So there are little canals, canaliculi, that spread across the bones that will allow nutrients and gases to go through. Extracellular matrix, so this is outside of your cells. Outside of the bone cells themselves, there's a matrix that consists mainly of collagen and inorganic salts. So collagen is going to provide strength for your bones. It's not part of your bone cell, it's on the outside, it's part of the matrix. Collagen is going to provide strength and resilience. And then the inorganic salts are what help your bone to be hard. And therefore, they don't crush very easily. They don't even break all that easily. In your bone, these osteocytes and the matrix are organized into osteons, which are round structures that are very much cemented together. And here again, the diagram's coming where I will point that out a little bit better. These central, larger Haversian canals contain your larger blood vessels, nerve fibers, and they extend longitudinally up and down throughout the bone. Central canals are going to be connected by transverse perforating canals. They're also called Volkmann's canals. So they are going to connect transversely. Unlike compact bone, spongy bone is made up of osteocytes and matrix that lie in that trabeculiculi, like I had said. So spongy bone and compact bone are different. Diagram, here you can see compact bone, very tightly wound. Spongy bone looks very much like a sponge. And like I said, when your bone cells have died, it's very easy to actually even kind of crush that spongy bone. All right, so here's the other diagram. If I am looking inside of my bone, so this pretty much on the other picture, these two are new. So every one of these circles is considered an osteon. So this would be one osteon. Inside of the osteon is the Haversian or central canal where my large blood vessels are going to run. So inside the center of every osteon is my blood vessels. That's my central canal or Haversian canal. My transverse or perforating canals run sideways, and they're going to go from one central canal to another. One central canal to another. So if we're looking at a long bone, they are filled, this compact bone is filled with osteons that have blood vessels running through the center of them. In the middle, the center of the entire bone is where those blood vessels are going to be in that medullary cavity. Then I'm going to have a little bit of spongy bone before it becomes compact bone. If I look even further, so this would be microscopic. If I look inside, this would be a bone cell, so that would be an osteocyte. The lacuna is the space that surrounds my blood cells. And then these little itty bitty canaliculi are the little canals that carry gas and nutrients within the bone cells. So this is extremely microscopic, taken out of this diagram up here. Bone development and growth, we will keep going with that. Bones form by replacing connective tissues in the fetus. So beginning bone development takes place before you're even born. The first bones are cartilage, and they will eventually ossify and become strong bones. Some are going to form with sheet-like layers, and that's going to be intramembranous bones, while others are going to be called endochondral bones, where they're going to replace cartilage. So chondro deals with cartilage. It's going to replace cartilage. Intramembranous is going to be layers of connective tissue. So if we look specifically at intramembranous bones, broad flat bones of your skull would be the most common example of that. So what happens, I would highlight, circle, osteoblast. Osteo means bone. Blast means build. Osteoblast builds bone. So osteoblasts are going to deposit bony matrix all directions, forming spongy bone. So the osteoblasts are responsible for forming bone. Blast means build, osteo means bone. So what happens then, in your longer bones, you're typically going to have endochondral bone development, and inside your skull you're going to have intramembranous, where it lays down in layers. So you can see how as the body forms, the joints have not filled in, all of your bones are not completely formed and not completely put together, which is very important, because if a human skull was completely put together when that baby was born, that skull would probably be broken. Because those joints have not formed, it allows the skull to move a little bit and therefore can go through the birth canal without breaking anything. Once the deposits are made, surrounds the osteoblast, it becomes a bone cell. So osteoblasts are going to build, they're going to form bone cells. Cells of this tissue are going to develop bone, and they're going to give rise to the periosteum, the outside part. Osteoblasts then, on the inside of the periosteum, make the compact bone. So notice spongy bone is formed first, compact bone is formed second, and when the bone is forming, that's called ossification. Ossify means to harden. My bone is going from spongy to compact, or it's going from cartilage to actual bone tissue. That would be ossification, or hardening, ossifying of the bones. If I look at long bones and most of your others, like I said, intramembranous, specifically skull. Endochondral bones are most of the other bones. So they're going to develop as cartilage first. So here again in the fetus, they are cartilage. They have the shape of a bone, but it's cartilage material that it's made of. Cartilage then is broken down in the diaphysis and is replaced with bone while periosteum starts to develop. What I want you to know here, the diaphysis, the shaft of the bone, ossifies first. So bone development basically kind of grows from the center outward. So my cartilage is invaded by blood vessels. These osteoblasts, cell builders, are going to form spongy bone at the primary ossification center in the middle of the diaphysis. Primary means first. So it is first outside, in the middle, in the shaft, in the diaphysis. Then the periosteum is going to form compact bone again around that center. Secondary ossification occurs later at the ends of your bone, so at the epiphyseus. And then a band of cartilage is still present, and that is the epiphyseal plate, which is your growth plate. So this growth plate of cartilage remains present between these ossification centers. So between my shaft and between my ends is where your growth plate occurs. Layer of cartilage cells go through mitosis. They make up that epiphyseal plate. Eventually, as your bone grows, that plate will close. So, new term, osteoclast. Clast is going to break down. Blast build, clasts break down. So osteoclasts are going to break down matrix, and they are going to they're going to be replaced by osteoblasts that deposit new bone. So even now, you guys are however old, 16 to 18, I am 45, we are still building new bone. Even I am building new bone. So constant process of osteoclasts breaking down older bone cells and osteoblasts building new bone cells. So your bone tissue is continually being replaced. It's a slower process, but it does take place. A long bone will continue to grow in length while the cells of the epiphyseal plate are active. Once that plate, your growth plate, ossifies, once it hardens, once the cartilage is gone, it's become bone, the bone is done growing. And that's what we call closing of the growth plates. Once those growth plates are closed or inactive, that bone's not going to grow anymore. Medullary cavity forms in the diaphysis, and that forms because of osteoclasts are going to hollow out the center. And then as you grow, increase in thickness, so your bones are going to increase in thickness. Ossification helps with that. Epiphyseal plates are responsible for length growth. So diagram, I like this diagram. Here's a little bit of cartilage, very early in fetal growth. Starting to go a little bit more, I can see periosteum starts on the outside. The primary ossification center is in the diaphysis. That's where I'm going to first develop real compact bone tissue. Blood vessels will start to develop in the middle. As time goes on, here's where primary started. Now my secondary ossification centers, I'm going to start to get bone growth here. And this will be my epiphyseal plate that will stay there. And you can see that on this diagram. Going to continue to grow. These are still open. When the bone is done growing, these plates become lines. They have ossified. They are no longer cartilage. That bone is at full length. I have my blood vessels. I have my compact bone. I have my articular cartilage for attachment to another bone. That would be a bone that is completely done growing.